Hi, welcome back to the Story Corner. Thanks for stopping by, spending a little time. Um, my adorable baby fell asleep in my arms, so I didn't grab any cute handmade stuff to show off. So you're probably all like, oh, good, huh? No, of course you love to see my stuff. It's so cute. I mean, how could you not want to see all the stuff I make, right? uh, um, I did. I did read last night. It was the night before that I didn't. I was sick. I kind of had a relapse today because I was up all night with him. See him sleeping right now, so that he can keep me up all night again. Huh? You see? Yeah, he's a stinker. He's a sweet. I love him. So I read chapter 21 and it wasn't very long. So then I thought, oh, I'll just read the next chapter. And then it was really long. So yesterday was a whole hour, over an hour. So little recap. Let's see. So many things happened. It was a long chapter. They went to the opera and she was going to go with her friend and the Mervins, and then her grandma showed up and made her go with her instead, and she was really embarrassed. And her cousins are really obnoxious and their families, yeah, embarrassing. So she went with them and it was terrible. And so she decided as soon as it was over, she was going to go find Mrs. Mervin and ride home with them because she didn't want to stay with the Duvals and the Bringtons. So she left with Sir Clement Willoughby to go find him, and then they were already gone. So he took her in his carriage and made him go the wrong way so he could spend more time alone with her and tell her how much he adored her. And she was so stressed out. And Lord Orville saw her when she was trying to go, and he offered his carriage, but Sir Clement Willoughby would not hear of it, and he insisted she go with him. So he went back to her house to make sure she got home safe and wait for her, which is so dang sweet. He was really worried about, that this Sir Clement guy was gonna be a booger. So he was at the house to check on her. So in short, it was a lot. We read for an hour, but that sums it up quickly. So we are letter 22. Oh, yeah. What did you have for dinner? I almost forgot to ask. We had grilled salmon with dill sauce, which is Charles's favorite food ever. He says that he's so sweet. He says that the grilled salmon that I make is the best salmon he's ever had, bar none. Every restaurant, every salmon he's ever had, which is so sweet. Anyway, we had grilled salmon with dill sauce and cilantro lime rice and steamed carrots, peas and carrots. So it was so good. Simple, but just yummy. And then I made cookies earlier, and I made oatmeal cookies, but I put butterscotch chips in them instead of raisins and toffee bits. So they had a little bit of crunch. They were really good. And I don't use brown sugar. I just use cane juice, evaporated cane juice, because it's less processed. And then I just pour a little bit of molasses in it if it ever calls for brown sugar. So I put extra molasses. I didn't mean to put quite so much. So they were really dark brown, but the flavor was so good. The molasses was so good in them. They were extra yummy, but they're these dark brown. They don't look like oatmeal cookies. They look like not burnt, but they just look like ginger snaps or something. But they were so good. It wasn't a very big batch, so we're going to have them all gone by tomorrow. Anyway, it was yum. So, letter 22. Evelina in continuation. Monday morning, April 18th. So again, this is all these letters right now are her writing to Mr. Villers. Mrs. Mervyn has just communicated to me an anecdote concerning Lord Orville, which has much surprised, half pleased, and half pained me. While they were sitting together during the opera, he told her that he had been greatly concerned at the impertinence which the young lady under her protection had suffered from Mr. Lovell, but that he had had the pleasure of assuring her she had no future disturbance to apprehend from him. Mrs. Mervyn, with great eagerness, begged he would explain himself, and said she hoped he had not thought so insignificant an affair worthy his serious attention. There is nothing, answered he, which requires more immediate notice than impertinence, for it ever encroaches when it is tolerated. He then added that he believed he ought to apologize for the liberty he had taken of interfering, but that as he regarded himself in the light of a party concerned from having had the honor of dancing with Miss Anville, he could not possibly reconcile to himself a patient neutrality. He then proceeded to tell her that he had waited upon Mr. Lovell the morning after the play, that the visit had proved an amicable one, but the particulars were neither entertaining nor necessary. He only assured her Miss Anville might be perfectly easy, since Mr. Lovell had engaged his honour never more to mention or even to hint at what had passed at Mrs. Stanley's assembly. Mrs. Mervyn expressed her satisfaction at this conclusion, and thanked him for his polite attention to her young friend. It would be needless, said he, to request that this affair may never transpire, since Mrs. Mervyn cannot but see the necessity of keeping it inviolably secret. But I thought it incumbent upon me, as the young lady is under your protection, to assure both you and her of Mr. Lovell's future respect. Had I known of this previous visit to Lord Orville's making it, what dreadful uneasiness would it have cost me? Yet that he had so much interest himself in securing me from offence gives me, I must own, an internal pleasure greater than I can express, for I feared he had too contemptuous an opinion of me to take any trouble upon my account, though, after all, this interference might rather be to satisfy his own delicacy than from thinking well of me. But how cool, how quiet is true courage! Who, from seeing Lord Orville at the play, would have imagined his resentment would have hazarded his life? So he went to Lovell and said, he said it was amicable, which means it was friendly and it was nice, but he was like, leave her alone. Which, back in those days, if you interfered in a situation like that, they could actually, if they chose to be offended, could call you out and have a duel, and sword fight or shoot to the death. It was no little thing to challenge somebody. It was you were putting your life on the line. So it was. It wasn't just a leave her alone kind of situation. Like if the guy had been really offended, he could have ended up in a fight, a challenge. So very sweet. Yet his displeasure was evident, though his real bravery and his politeness equally guarded him from entering into any discussion in our presence. Madame Duval, as I expected, was most terribly angry yesterday. She scolded me for, I believe, 2 hours having left her, and protested she had been so much surprised at my going, without giving her time to answer, that she could hardly knew whether she was awake or asleep. But she assured me that if I ever did so again, she would never more take me into public, and she expressed an equal degree of displeasure against Sir Clement, because he had not even spoken to her, always of the captain's side in an argument. The captain, as after dinner, Mrs. Mervyn introduced the subject of our leaving London. Madame Duval said she should stay a month or 2 longer. The captain told her she was welcome, but that he and his family should go into the country on Tuesday morning. A most disagreeable scene followed. Madame Duval insisted upon keeping me with her, but Mrs. Mervyn said that as I was actually engaged on a visit to Lady Howard, who had only consented to my leaving her for a few days, she could not think of returning without me. Perhaps if the captain had not interfered, the good breeding and mildness of Mrs. Mervyn might have had some effect upon Madame Duval. But he passes no opportunity of provoking her, and therefore made so many gross and rude speeches, all of which she retorted, that, in conclusion, she vowed she would sooner go to law in right of her relationship than that I should be taken away from her. I heard this account from Mrs. Mervyn, who was so kindly considerate as to give me a pretence for quitting the room as soon as this dispute began, lest Madame Duval should refer to me and insist on my obedience. The final result of the conversation was that, to soften manners for the present, Madame Duval should make one in the party for Howard Grove, whither we are positively to go next Wednesday, and though we are none of us satisfied with this plan, we know not how to form a better. Mrs. Mervyn is now writing to Lady Howard to excuse bringing this unexpected guest, and to prevent the disagreeable surprise which must otherwise attend her reception. This dear lady seems eternally studying my happiness and advantage. Tonight we go to the Pantheon, which is the last diversion we shall partake of in London. For tomorrow, this moment, my dearest sir, I have received your kind letter. If you thought us too dissipated the first week, I almost fear to know what you will think of us this second. However, the Pantheon this evening will probably be the last public place which I shall ever see. The assurance of your support and protection in regard to Madame Duval, though what I never doubted, excites my utmost gratitude. How indeed, cherished under your roof, the happy object of your constant indulgence, how could I have borne to become the slave of her tyrannical humours? Pardon me that I speak so hardly of her, but whenever the idea of passing my days with her occurs to me, the comparison which naturally follows takes from me all that forbearance which I believe I owe her. You are already displeased with Sir Clement. To be sure, then, his behaviour after the opera will not make peace with you. Indeed, the more I reflect upon it, the more angry I am. I was entirely in his power, and it was cruel in him to cause me so much terror. Oh, my dearest sir, were I but worthy the prayers and the wishes you offer for me, the utmost ambition of my heart would be fully satisfied. But I greatly fear you will find me, now that I am out of the reach of your assisting prudence, more weak and imperfect than you could have expected. I have not now time to write another word, for I must immediately hasten to dress for the evening. I will check. That's the end of the chapter. I'll check how long the next one is, so that we don't read for a whole other hour tonight. It's kind of long. Oh, well, let's see. 10 pages. 1, 2, 3. It's 3 times as long as that last. It's only been 12 minutes. We'll just do it. Okay, letter 23. Evelina in continuation. Queen Anne Street, Tuesday, April 19th. There is something to me half melancholy in writing an account of our last adventures in London. However, as this day is merely appropriated to packing and preparations for our journey, and as I shall shortly have no more adventures to write, I think I may as well complete my town journal at once. And when you have it all together, I hope, my dear sir, you will send me your observations and thoughts upon it to Howard Grove. About 8 o'clock we went to the Pantheon. I was extremely struck with the beauty of the building, which greatly surpassed whatever I could have expected or imagined. Yet it has more the appearance of a chapel than of a place of diversion, and though I was quite charmed with the magnificence of the room, I felt that I could not be as gay and thoughtless there as at Ranelagh, for there is something in it which rather inspires awe and solemnity than mirth and pleasure. However, perhaps it may only have this effect upon such a novice as myself. I should have said that our party consisted only of Captain, Mrs. and Miss Mervyn, as Madame Duval spent the day in the city, which I own I could not lament. There was a great deal of company, but the first person we saw was Sir Clement Willoughby. He addressed us with his usual ease, and joined us for the whole evening. I felt myself very uneasy in his presence, for I could not look at him, nor hear him speak without recollecting the chariot adventure, but to my great amazement I observed that he looked at me without the least apparent discomposure, though certainly he ought not to think of his behaviour without blushing. I really wish I had not forgiven him, and then he could not have ventured to speak to me any more. There was an exceeding good concert, but too much talking to hear it well. Indeed, I am quite astonished to find how little music is attended to in silence, for though everybody seems to admire, hardly anybody listens. We did not see Lord Orville till we went into the tea-room, which is large, low, and underground, and serves merely as a foil to the apartments above. He then sat next to us. He seemed to belong to a large party, chiefly of ladies, but among the gentlemen attending them I perceived Mr. Lovell. I was extremely irresolute whether or not I ought to make my acknowledgments to Lord Orville for his generous conduct in securing me from the future impertinence of that man, and I thought that as he had seemed to allow Mrs. Mervyn to acquaint me, though no one else, of the measures which he had taken, he might perhaps suppose me ungrateful if silent. However, I might have spared myself the trouble of deliberating, as I never once had the shadow of an opportunity of speaking unheard by Sir Clement. On the contrary, he was so exceedingly officious and forward that I could not say a word to anybody, but instantly he bent his head forward, and with an air of profound attention, as if I had addressed myself wholly to him, and yet I never once looked at him, and would not have spoken to him on any account. Indeed, Mrs. Mervyn herself, though unacquainted with the behaviour of Sir Clement after the opera, says it is not right for a young woman to be seen so frequently in public with the same gentleman, and if our stay in town was to be lengthened, she would endeavour to represent to the captain the impropriety of allowing his constant attendance. For Sir Clement, with all his easiness, could not be so eternally of our parties if the captain was less fond of his company. At the same table with Lord Orville sat a gentleman, I call him so only because he was at the same table, who, almost from the moment I was seated, fixed his eyes steadfastly on my face, and never once removed them to any other object during tea time, notwithstanding my dislike of his staring, must, I am sure, have been very evident. I was quite surprised that a man whose boldness was so offensive could have gained admission into a party of which Lord Orville made one, for I naturally concluded him to be some low-bred and uneducated man, and I thought my idea was indubitably confirmed when I heard him say to Sir Clement Willoughby in an audible whisper, which is a mode of speech very distressing and disagreeable to bystanders, "For heaven's sake, Willoughby, who is that lovely creature?" But what was my amazement, when, listening attentively for the answer, though my head was turned another way, I heard Sir Clement say, "I am sorry I cannot inform your lordship, but I am ignorant myself." Lordship! How extraordinary that a nobleman, accustomed in all probability to the first rank of company in the kingdom, from his earliest infancy, can possibly be deficient in good manners. However faulty in morals and principles, even Sir Clement Willoughby appeared modest in comparison with this person. During tea, a conversation was commenced upon the times, fashions, and public places in which the company of both tables joined. It began by Sir Clement's inquiring of Miss Mervyn and of me if the Pantheon had answered our expectations. We both readily agreed that it had greatly exceeded them. "Ay, to be sure," said the captain. "Why, you don't—" Excuse me. Sorry, I got a little bit of something in my throat. Excuse me, frog. Now I sound like a frog, my heck. Why, you don't suppose they'd confess they didn't like it, do you? Whatever's the fashion, they must like, of course, or else I'd be bound for it they'd own that there never was such a dull place as this here invented. And has then this building, said Lord Orville, no merit that may serve to lessen your censure? Will not your eye, sir, speak something in its favour? "Ay," cried the lord, I don't know his name, "and is there any eye here that can find pleasure in looking at dead walls or statues, when such heavenly living objects as now I see demand all their admiration?" Man, he's... Can you imagine? I mean, they've let you know that she's really beautiful, like exceptionally beautiful, but can you imagine sitting there and have somebody just stare at you and say things like that while you're sitting there? That would be so embarrassing and uncomfortable. "Oh, certainly," said Lord Orville. "The lifeless symmetry of architecture, however beautiful the design and proportion, no man would be so mad as to put in competition. Did you wake up? Hi. You sweet baby, I love you. With the animated charms of nature, but when, as tonight, the eye may be regaled at the same time, and in one view, with all the excellence of art and all the perfection of nature, I cannot think that either suffer by being seen together." "I grant, my lord," said Sir Clement, "that the cool eye of unimpassioned philosophy may view both with equal attention and equal safety, but where the heart is not so well guarded, it is apt to interfere, and render, even to the eye, all objects but one insipid and uninteresting." So basically saying it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. You know, when there's this gorgeous woman sitting in front of us, then she's all we can think about. Which is, I don't know, that would be Very uncomfortable. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that because I was never drop dead gorgeous, but that would be very uncomfortable. "Aye, aye," cried the captain, "you may talk what you will of your eye here and your eye there, and for all the matter of that, to be sure you have two, but we all know they both squint one way." "Far be it from me," said Lord Orville, "to dispute the magnetic power of beauty, which irresistibly draws and attracts whatever has soul and sympathy, and I am happy to acknowledge that though we have now no gods to occupy a mansion professedly built for them, yet we have secured their better halves, for we have goddesses to whom we all must most willingly bow down." And then, with a very droll air, he made a profound reverence to the ladies. "They'd need to be goddesses with a vengeance," said the captain, "for they're mortal dear to look at. Howsomever, I should be glad to know what you can see in e'er a face among them that's worth half a guinea for a sight." "Half a guinea!" exclaimed that same lord. "I would get half I am worth for a sight of only one, provided I can make my own choice. And prithee, how can money be better employed than in the service of fine women?" "If the ladies of his own party can pardon the captain's speech," said Sir Clement, "I think he has a fair claim to the forgiveness of all." So, I mean, all the women that are sitting there with him, he's kind of insulting them by, saying he'd give half his fortune just to look at the one that he wants to look at. The rest of them be damned. "Hi, hi, you're so cute. Yes, you're so precious. You sweet baby. I love you. Yeah, you're a pumpkin." What did you see? I don't know what he saw. Something. What? Oh. "Then you depend very much, as I doubt not but you may," said Lord Orville, "upon the general sweetness of the sex. But as to the ladies of the captain's party, they may easily pardon, for they cannot be hurt." "But they must have a devilish good conceit of themselves, though," said the captain, "to believe all that. Howsomever, whether or no, I should be glad to be told by some of you, who seem to be knowing in them things, what kind of diversion can be found in such a place as this here, for one who has had long ago his full of face hunting." Everybody laughed, but nobody spoke. "Why, look ye there now," continued the captain, "you're all at a dead stand. Not a man among you can answer that there question. Why, then, I must make bold to conclude that you all came here for no manner of purpose but to stare at one another's pretty faces, though for the matter of that, half of 'em are plaguey ugly, and as to the other half, I believe it's none of God's manufactory." Half of them are ugly and the other half of them are painted. He's so rude. "What are you doing?" "Oh, what'd he do?" "What the ladies may can come hither for, sir," said Mr. Lovell, stroking his ruffles and looking down, "it would ill become us to determine, but as to we men, doubtless we can have no other view than to admire them." "If I bean't mistaken," cried the captain, looking earnestly in his face, "you are that same person we saw at Love for Love t'other night, bean't you?" Mr. Lovell bowed. "Why then, gentlemen," continued he with a loud laugh, "I must tell you a most excellent good joke. When all was over, as sure as you're alive, he asked what the play was. Ha, ha, ha!" "Sir," said Mr. Lovell, colouring, "if you were as much used to a town life as I am, which I presume is not precisely the case, I fancy you would not find so much diversion from a circumstance so common." "Common? What, is it common?" repeated the captain. "Why then, 'fore George, such chaps are more fit to be sent to school and well disciplined with the cat and nine tails than to poke their heads into a playhouse. Why, a play is the only thing left nowadays that has a grain of sense in it. For as to all the rest of your public places, d'ye see, if they were all put together, I wouldn't give that for 'em," snapping his fingers. "And now we're talking of them sort of things, there's your operas. I should like to know now what any of you can find to say for them." Lord Orville, who was the most able to have answered, seemed by no means to think the captain worthy in an argument upon a subject concerning which he had neither knowledge nor feeling. But, turning to us, he said, "The ladies are silent, and we seem to have engrossed the conversation to ourselves, in which we are much more our own enemies than theirs. But," addressing himself to Miss Mervyn and me, "I am most desirous to hear the opinions of these young ladies, to whom all public places must as yet be new." We both, and with eagerness, declared that we had received as much, if not more pleasure at the opera than anywhere, but we had better have been silent, for the captain, quite displeased, said, "What signifies asking them girls? Do you think they know their own mind yet? Ask 'em after anything that's called diversion, and you're sure they'll say it's very vastly fine. They're a set of parrots and speak by rote, for they all say the same thing, but ask 'em how they like making puddings and pies, and I'll warrant you'll pose 'em. As to them operas, I desire I may hear no more of their liking such nonsense, and for you, Moll," to his daughter, "I charge you, as you value my favour, that you'll never again be so impertinent as to have a taste of your own before my face." She had a different opinion of him. She likes the opera and he doesn't. She's not allowed to do that. And now he's cussing her out in front of everybody and humiliating her, which is so rude. "There are fools enough in the world without your adding to that number. I'll have no daughter of mine affect them sort of megrims. It is a shame they ain't put down. And if I'd my will, there's not a magistrate in this town but should be knocked of the head for suffering them. If you've a mind to praise anything, why you may praise a play, and welcome, for I like it myself." This reproof effectually silenced us both for the rest of the evening. Nay, indeed, for some minutes it seemed to silence everybody else. "I love you, you sweet baby." "Yeah, you precious." "Oh." Nay, indeed, for some minutes it seemed to silence everybody else, till Mr. Lovell, not willing to lose an opportunity of returning the captain's sarcasm, said, "Why, really, sir, it is but natural to be most pleased with what is most familiar, and I think of all our diversions, there is not one so much in common between us and the country as a play. Not a village but has its barns and comedians, and as for the stage business, why, it may be pretty equally done anywhere, and even in regard to us and the canal. Confined as we all are within the semicircle of a theatre, there is no place where the distinction is less obvious." While the captain seemed considering for Mr. Lovell's meaning, Lord Orville, probably with a view to prevent his finding it, changed the subject to Cox's Museum, and asked what we thought of it. "Think," said he. "Why, I think as how it ain't worth thinking about. I like no such gimcracks. It is only fit, in my mind, for monkeys, though for aught I know, they too might turn up their noses at it." "May we ask your lordship's own opinion?" said Mrs. Mervyn. "The mechanism," answered he, "is wonderfully ingenious. I am sorry it is turned to no better account, but its purport is so frivolous, so very remote from all aim at instruction or utility, that the sight of so fine a show only leaves regret in the mind, that so much work and so much ingenuity should not be better bestowed. The truth is," said the captain, "that in all this huge town, so full as it is of folks of all sorts, there ain't so much as one public place, besides a playhouse, where a man, that's to say a man who is a man, ought not to be ashamed to show his face. The other day they got me to a ridotto, but I believe it will be long enough before they get me to another. I know no more what to do with myself than if my ship's company had been metamorphosed into Frenchmen. Then again, there's your famous Ranelagh that you make such a fuss about. Why, what a dull place is that! It's the worst of all." "Ranelagh dull! Ranelagh dull!" was echoed from mouth to mouth, and all the ladies, as if of one accord, regarded the captain with looks of the most ironical contempt. "As to Ranelagh," said Mr. Lovell, "most indubitably, though the price is plebeian, it is by no means adapted to the plebeian taste. It requires a certain acquaintance with high life, and 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 something of Douvregau to be really sensible of its merit. those whose connections and so forth are not among les gens comme il faut can feel nothing but ennui as at such a place as Ranelagh. Sorry, I don't speak French. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Ranelagh, cried Lord. She doesn't know his name. Oh, 'tis the divinest place under heaven, or indeed, for aught I know. Oh, you creature, cried a pretty but affected young lady, patting him with her fan. You shan't talk so. I know what you are going to say, but positively I won't sit by you if you're so wicked. And how can one sit by you and be good, said he, when only to look at you is enough to make one wicked, or wish to be so? Fie, my lord, returned she, you are really insufferable. I don't think I shall speak to you again these 7 years. What a metamorphosis, cried Lord Orville. Should you make a patriarch of his lordship? 7 years, said he. Dear madam, be contented with telling me you will not speak to me after 7 years, and I will endeavour to submit. Oh, very well, my lord, answered she. Pray date the end of our speaking to each other as early as you please. I'll promise to agree to your time. You know, dear madam, said he, sipping his tea, you know I only live in your sight. Oh, yes, my lord, I have long known that. But I begin to fear we shall be too late for Ranelagh this evening. Oh, no, madam, said Mr. Lovell, looking at his watch. It is but just past 10. No more, cried she. Oh, then we shall do very well. All the ladies now started up and declared they had no time to lose. Why, what the devil, cried the captain, leaning forward with both his arms on the table. Are you going to Ranelagh at this time of night? The ladies looked at one another and smiled. To Ranelagh, cried Lord. Yes, and I hope you are going too, for we cannot possibly excuse these ladies. I go to Ranelagh. If I do, I'll be. Everybody now stood up, and the stranger lord, coming round to me, said, You go, I hope. No, my lord, I believe not. Oh, you cannot, must not be so barbarous. And he took my hand, and ran on saying such fine speeches and compliments that I might almost have supposed myself a goddess, and him a pagan paying me adoration. As soon as I possibly could, I drew back my hand, but he frequently, in the course of conversation, contrived to take it again, though it was extremely disagreeable to me, and the more so as I saw that Lord Orville had his eye fixed upon us, with a gravity of attention that made me uneasy. And surely, my dear sir, it was a great liberty in this lord, notwithstanding his rank, to treat me so freely. As to Sir Clement, he seemed in misery. They all endeavoured to prevail with the captain to join the Ranelagh party, and this lord told me in a low voice that it was tearing his heart out to go without me. During this conversation, Mr. Lovell came forward, and assuming a look of surprise, made me a bow, and inquired how I did, protesting upon his honour that he had not seen me before, or would sooner have paid his respects to me. Though his politeness was evidently constrained, yet I was very glad to be thus assured of having nothing more to fear from him. The captain, far from listening to their persuasions of accompanying them to Ranelagh, was quite in a passion at the proposal, and vowed he would sooner go to the Black Hole in Calcutta. But, said Lord, if the ladies will take their tea at Ranelagh, you may depend upon our seeing them safe home, for we shall be proud of the honour of attending them. May be so, said the captain, but I'll tell you what, if one of these places bean't enough for them tonight, why tomorrow they shall go to another one. We instantly declared ourselves very ready to go home. Oh, sorry. Why tomorrow they shall go to narrow one. Oh, so he's saying if they're not satisfied, they can't go anywhere tomorrow. We instantly declared ourselves very ready to go home. For all you who are worried about this marker, it's dry. He's writing on stuff and it's not working, just in case you were wondering. Oh. Say, oh, wow. Oh, wow. It is not for ourselves that we petition, said Lord, but for us, if you have any charity, you will not be so cruel as to deny us. We only beg you to prolong our happiness for a few minutes. The favour is but a small one for you to grant, though so great a one for us to receive. To tell you a piece of my mind, said the captain surlily, I think you might as well not give the girls so much of this palaver. They'll take it all for gospel. As to Moll, why, she's well enough, but nothing extraordinary, though perhaps you may persuade her that her pug nose is all the fashion. Oh, that's so rude. He's making fun of her nose in front of everybody. That's mean. He's mean. And as to the other, why, she's good white and red, to be sure, but what of that? I'll warrant she'll moulder away as fast as her neighbours. Is there, cried Lord, another man in this place who, seeing such objects, could make such a speech? As to that there, returned the captain, I don't know whether there be or no, and to make free I don't care, for I shan't go for to model myself by any of these fair weather chaps who dare not so much as to say their souls are their own, and for aught I know, no more they bean't. I am almost as much ashamed of my countrymen as if I were a Frenchman, and I believe in my heart that I ain't a pin to choose between them, and before long we shall hear the very sailors talking that lingo, and see never a swabber without a bag and a sword. Well, upon honour, cried Mr. Lovell, you gentlemen of the ocean have a most severe way of judging. Severe? For George, that is impossible, for, to cut the matter short, the men, as they call themselves, are no better than monkeys, and as to the women, why, they are mere dolls. So now you've got my opinion of this subject, and so I wish you good night. The ladies, who were very impatient to be gone, made their curtsies and tripped away, followed by the gentlemen of their party, except the lord I have before mentioned, and Lord Orville, who stayed to make inquiries of Mrs. Mervyn concerning our leaving town, and then saying, with his usual politeness, something civil to each of us, with a very grave air, he quitted us. Lord remained some minutes longer, which he spent in making a profusion of compliments to me, by which he prevented my hearing distinctly what Lord Orville said, to my great vexation, especially as he looked, I thought so at least, as if displeased at his particularity of behaviour to me. In going to an outward room to wait for the carriage, I walked, and could not possibly avoid it, between this nobleman and Sir Clement Willoughby. Is that the dry one? That better be the dead one. Yeah, put the lid back on. Good job. Wow! And the servant said, and when the servant said the coach stopped the way, though the latter offered me his hand, which I should much have preferred, this same lord, without any ceremony, took mine himself, and Sir Clement, with a look extremely provoked, conducted Miss Mervyn. In all ranks and all situations of life, how strangely do characters and manners differ! Lord Orville, with a politeness which knows no intermission and makes no distinction, is as unassuming and modest as if he had never mixed with the great, and was totally ignorant of every qualification he possesses. This other lord, though lavish of compliments and fine speeches, seems to me an entire stranger to real good breeding. Whoever strikes his fancy engrosses his whole attention. He is forward and bold, has an air of haughtiness towards men, and a look of libertinism towards women, and his conscious quality seems to have given him a freedom in his way of speaking to either sex that is very little short of rudeness. When we returned home, we were all low-spirited. The evening's entertainment had displeased the captain, and his displeasure, I believe, disconcerted us all. And here I thought to have concluded my letter, but to my great surprise, just now we had a visit from Lord Orville. He called, he said, just to pay his respects to us before we left town, and made many inquiries concerning our return. And when Mrs. Mervyn told him we were going into the country without any view of again quitting it, he expressed his concern in such terms, so polite, so flattering, so serious, that I could hardly forbear being sorry myself. Were I to go immediately to Berry Hill, I am sure I should feel nothing but joy. But now we are joined by the captain and by Madame Duval. I must own I expect very little pleasure at Howard Grove. Before Lord Orville went, Sir Clement Willoughby called. He was more grave than I had ever seen him, and made several attempts to speak to me in a low voice, and to assure me that his regret upon the occasion of our journey was entirely upon my account. But I was not in spirits, and could not bear to be teased by him. However, he has so well paid his court to Captain Mervyn that he gave him a very hearty invitation to the Grove. At this he brightened, and just then Lord Orville took leave. No doubt but he was disgusted at this ill-timed, ill-bred partiality, for surely it was very wrong to make an invitation before Lord Orville in which he was not included. Yeah, that's really rude. The two guys standing there and he bites one and not the other. I was so much chagrined that as soon as he went, I left the room, and I shall not go downstairs till Sir Clement has gone. Lord Orville cannot but observe his assiduous endeavours to ingratiate himself into my favour, and does not this extravagant civility of Captain Mervyn give him reason to suppose that it meets with our general approbation? I cannot think upon this subject without inexpressible uneasiness, and yet I can think of nothing else. Adieu, my dearest sir. Pray write to me immediately. How many long letters has this one short fortnight produced? More than I may probably ever write again. I fear I shall have tired you with reading them, but you will now have time to rest, for I shall find but little to say in future. And now, most honoured sir, with all the follies and imperfections which I have thus faithfully recounted, can you, and with unabated kindness, suffer me to sign myself your dutiful and most affectionate Evelina? Okay. That's a problem with being absolutely gorgeous. You're gonna attract all this attention everywhere you go, and you can't escape from all the people following you around and staring at you. I guess I'll be grateful that I was never just so beautiful, you know. I didn't ever have to deal with that kind of stuff. Anyway, all right. Thank you for stopping by. I did keep it a little shorter tonight by like 25 minutes. And what are you doing? You have a marker. Oh no. Oh no. Thanks for stopping by the Story Corner for Story Hour with the Story Lady. And don't forget to leave a like on the video because that actually does help. If people watch and then leave a like, then YouTube will actually start recommending the video to other people, and it'll show up in their feed, and I could actually grow my channel. But if nobody leaves likes, then YouTube is like, oh, people don't like this content, so we won't show it to more people. So the likes make a difference. Okay, say bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. What is it? So pretty. Oh. Okay, say bye bye. Good night. See you next time. I love you, baby. Yeah, I love you.